really feel this is we're in a healthier place. It just the frenzy that we had on the sell side, the appreciation of properties that we had seen in terms of just the housing prices going up, that caused a lot of problems, specifically first-time home buyers that are still struggling at this point. The market now is more of where it should be, I feel, than where we were previously. Had never experienced anything like that before, and hopefully we don't see that again.
Hello, Atlanta, and welcome to AC Pro Talk, the inaugural podcast for Atlanta communities. My name is Tony Stevens, Chief Operating Officer, and I'm one of your co-hosts. We have my other co-host, Mr. Mark Hall, Atlanta Communities President, and Natasha Rooskrantz, our other co-host, our Chief Business Development Officer. And today we have a very special guest with us. We have John Ryan, Chief Marketing Officer at Georgia MLS. Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning. All right, cool.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. We will get to the meat of our conversation in a moment, but I behoove myself if I didn't say that John is our first guest here on the podcast, and John and I have known each other for going on 30 years and worked together for about 13 years and spent a lot of time together with our families. And John, thank you really very much for being here today.
Johnny, Mark, Natasha, what a pleasure to be here today. It's an honor to sit amongst the leadership of Atlanta Communities, and I have to say how much I respect your company and what you've achieved, and the fact that I'm here today, it's an honor. So it's a pleasure.
It's our honor too. Yeah, and thank you very much, John. Well, let's get started. So, as mentioned, this is the very first AC Pro Talk podcast. We're very excited to be here with you today, and the timing couldn't be better. If 2021 was the frenzy and 2024 was the freeze, then I'm calling May of 2026 the great normalization. We finally moved away from the chaos into a market that actually makes sense for both professionals and families alike. Here's the high-level framework. The median price in Metro Atlanta is holding steady between $360,000 to $430,000. We are not seeing those 20% price hikes anymore. We're back to a healthy 3 to 4% appreciation. But the big shift is inventory. We've gone from a bidding war environment to a negotiation environment with nearly 5 months of inventory. Buyers have leverage again, and homes are averaging 60 or more days on the market. Mm-hmm. But you can't talk about the real estate market in Atlanta in 2026 without mentioning the FIFA World Cup. It's more than just soccer. It's a massive accelerator for the West Side and downtown. Projects like Centennial Yards are online, and the lifestyle premium, homes near the Beltline or the transit hubs, is where the strongest equity is being built. Finally, the mortgage rate sticker shock is behind us. We are no longer going to see those mortgage rates in the 2 to 3%, and buyers in the marketplace have normalized themselves with that roughly hovering around the 6 to 6.5% mortgage interest rate. Sellers can't just slap a sign in the yard anymore and expect it to sell within 48 hours. It has to be turnkey ready. And for buyers, it's about being surgical, knowing which neighborhoods are still undervalued before the next wave of growth hits. But for a bit of humor with us here this morning, in 2026, we've traded waiving inspections for actually checking if the HVAC works.
Imagine that.
What a novel concept.
Right.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead and continue our conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Natasha.
Perfect. All right, John. So if you had to describe Atlanta's 2026 market to an agent who has kind of buried their head in the sand for the last 6 months, what would you say to them?
Natasha, I would say that there's been a movement towards a balanced market. And I think the process has been going on here for the last couple of years. Tony mentioned inventory has played a big role in how the market has really moved to where we are. Post-pandemic, right during the pandemic, Georgia MLS, we were carrying about 17,000 listings in our inventory, which was anemic. I mean, it was, we would normally, in a high-end side of that market, we'd have 80,000 listings. Oh, wow. But when we saw the market shrink like that, all of a sudden you saw the behaviors of both agents and buyers and sellers change. So we have shifted towards a balanced side of things. It's giving equal opportunity to both sellers. Sellers have to make sure that their house is properly priced. I think that is a very important piece of it. And they also have to give a compelling reason. With all the inventory of why a buyer, when they come into the property, should be looking to say, this property reaches out to me. And that's all knowing the market, being prepared, knowing the local space, but also knowing the communities as well. Because right now, buyers have a little bit of leverage. They can pick and choose. They don't have the urgency that they had. They're being a little more decisive and not having to do it at a pace of making that quick reaction that they had to jump in during those previous years. So I really feel this is we're in a healthier place. It just the frenzy that we had on the sell side, the appreciation of properties that we had seen in terms of just the housing prices going up, that caused a lot of problems, specifically first-time home buyers that are still struggling at this point. So we've seen a bit of a flattening in terms of median prices, Tony said. The market now is more of where it should be, I feel, than where we were previously. Had never experienced anything like that before, and hopefully we don't see that again.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
I remember, we see our agents, and during that frenzy, they wouldn't even have to put the sign in the yard.
I know.
They'd put it in the MLS, and they were getting multiple offers within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then as things continued to shift, and I know Mr. Hall doesn't like the word shift.
So when I said it, Mark, I was
yeah,
I won't jump out.
Right. But we saw that on our community chatter, with the Atlanta Communities real estate professionals. They'd say, "Oh my gosh, I'm putting a sign in the yard. I haven't seen any activity, but it's only been out there 24 hours." So everybody has had to adapt with this market change. And again, it's a better market for everybody involved.
Right.
But for agents that were not with us or in the industry prior to 2020, and if they got in 2020 or maybe 2019, all they knew was that frenzied market for the first couple of years.
Right.
And now they're having to adapt how they are strategically working with their buyers and sellers to inform them that we are not in those days anymore.
Right.
We're back to a balanced market.
And I think there was a level of frustration, both on the buyers, where they were putting in offers on property and not even being close to where the property sold. And I think agents also were just, a little discouraged about that, where, that they have a buyer willing and able, ready to go ahead and get into a property. But then when you have 10, 15 multiple offers and going through that process over and over again, they were getting discouraged, and then thinking, is this the time really that I should be buying a property? And so that whole market, anecdotally, I told the story of property across the street where there were agents and buyers lined up at half-hour increments just to go in and show the property. And when I spoke to my neighbor, they had an offer before everybody had cleared out.
Sure.
That they were making offers right there on the spot with other people lined up outside to go ahead and do it. So yeah, that was a bit of an imbalance. There's no doubt
sustainability.
No, absolutely.
And again, waiving the inspections or people making offers on properties that they hadn't even seen. It had just come online, and they're sending offers over without even going out and looking at the property.
Well, it was interesting to see as a broker, agents that have come into the market within the last 5 years and calling distress because they're like, we don't have multiple offers. The property's been on the market 48 hours. What do we do?
They thought that was the norm.
Wow.
Yeah.
When I first got into real estate, my first year, it was, and this was a very long time ago, the average time of market was 365 days.
Wow.
So you knew you had to you're going to wait a year before you see a paycheck.
Yeah.
So 24, 48 hours, not normal.
No.
30, 60 days, that's the average.
Yeah.
About 60 days. That's a perfectly healthy market.
Absolutely.
Interesting you say 365 days. I just heard Brian Buffini speak at a conference last week in Charleston. And he mentioned when he was selling real estate in San Diego, back when he was just getting going, before he got into his coaching program and all that he is today, he said that he would not take a listing agreement that was less than 1 year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was less than 1 year. Yeah, very interesting.
How do you live with it? How do you live with a seller for a year?
No.
What's happening? What's going on?
Great patience.
Every time you look at your phone, you're like, "Oh my God, they're calling again!"
Right.
Well,
Excellent.
I'm going to move us on to our next question, which is, what is the single biggest shift between the market agents trained in 21 to 23 and the market that they're selling in now?
I think technology, Natasha. I think the advancement of AI and some of the things that I have seen over the last year and where this industry is moving and the way that data is being consolidated to go ahead and give presentations that's out there. To think that within a 4-year time period that we would say that there is such an industry move. I have seen systems that, through your phone can say, I would like to see this property on 123 Main Street. I would like to build a CMA on this property. I would like you to put it in a format that I can do it in a presentation and present it and have that grind and actually get the information that comes back in a format, not just the data coming back, but in a presentation mode that you can take and put right in front and then add the additional questions on top of it to go ahead and refine that presentation. I think the technology is
incredible.
It really is. In the other side of it, agents still need to know their marketplace. They cannot rely just on the tools that can go ahead. At Georgia MLS, we look at the data as the bridge where agents can take the data and then have that bridge to their clients and then present it in a non-emotional way. This is what the marketplace is. But the way that data now is being consolidated with that, we are going to see things here in the next year, both in the MLS world and the broker world. I think that's going to make a big difference because consumers have an expectation now. Data's out there more available. They are way more knowledgeable than they ever used to be. I mean, when Natasha started, when you were in the business, it was the books. When I first started at Georgia MLS, we had listing books.
Yes.
And then it went to the modem where the telephone was the means of connecting with the squelching. And, we went to 9600 baud, which we thought, and then we had networks and then the internet came and that changed the way. But this AI technology and the way that is being gathered and harnessed right now, it is moving at a rapid pace. And I think it's going to impact our industry to the good, for sure. But I think going back to full circle, agents still have to know the marketplace. They still have to know the communities. They still have to know the neighborhoods to go ahead and bring that concierge value and guide people into that transaction. So, leaning on technology, I think it's at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. And I think the agents that accept it will really have an advantage to that because, as I mentioned, consumers have expectations out there now. They are out doing their own homework. So the agents aren't going in, as the holder of all the knowledge. No, consumers, have just as much knowledge that's out there. So I think being able to harness that, present it in a manner that resonates with their clients, but it's happening. Systems are changing. And
so when I hear you say that, all I hear is context because the data is all out there. And so it puts it in a nice, neat little thing, except for what is the context of that, which we still, fortunately, for the most part, I think, have the context.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Instead of doing a lot of searches to pull up data and have that data and then having to manipulate that, now it's querying. It's asking questions and then building on those questions about, narrowing down so you can be specific to the needs of that client and to be able to take that data and do it in a quick, fast, efficient manner. That's going to change the way and it's changing now. It's happening as we speak. And so it's up to the MLSs to be able to go ahead and provide that additional technology, be up to speed with it, but and also be able to go ahead and have our members that that make our business what we are to go ahead and give additional tools and additional access, mobile and so on, maybe outside of what the brokerage provides, but harnessing that data in a manner that is going to really put that agent as the person that is most knowledgeable about what's going on.
And what we've told our agents and continue to preach to our agents is that you don't have to be an AI expert, but you need to understand enough. AI, in my opinion, and I know we share the same feeling here, is AI is not going to replace a real estate agent. This industry is face-to-face, sitting across from each other, having conversations, always will be. But the agents today have to be knowledgeable to make them better. By utilizing the technology and the artificial intelligence.
You can't run from it because, again, what I think is the consumers we're just a part of their consumer life, and they can go to the internet. And if you think about Amazon, Amazon scores a lot, but sometimes their prices are not as inexpensive as something somewhere else. The difference is convenience and speed and all the other things that they provide. Very good all the time. And real estate agents compete against that too.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah. And also, but have the knowledge to understand that even what is presented to give if you have a better view of that, AI is not going to give you the full picture. You have to be able to take that and mold that into what you know about it. And to your point, Tony, absolutely. I think it's going to be an assistant, but it will not replace. This is the belly to belly. This is a trusting environment. I mean, agents and consumers have to have that trust with each other for such a big, part of their life. And so the agents have to go ahead and be able to take what they have, but then also go ahead and provide that concierge.
What I think is...
Please, no, please, after you.
What I was going to say, so what I think is interesting too with AI is it's different than other technologies where you have to learn new platforms and you have to learn all the ins and outs of it. Instead, it's prompting.
Yes.
It's the questions, to your point, that you're asking, and the better the question, the better the results. And the craziness is that it gets to know you. It gets to know who you are, how you want to respond. And so it really does make that great assistant, and you're teaching it how to kind of clone yourself.
Yes.
It's scary, yet kind of awesome all at the same time.
Absolutely.
I signed up for a Claude account yesterday. I
love Claude.
Okay. I've been a big Gemini user because that's what we get with our Google Workspace. Mm-hmm. And Gemini is great. But I heard at the conference last week about Claude, and the speakers were talking about Claude and how it can work on projects for you. And my colleague Blake and I just had the light bulb went off, and I said, all right, I'm taking this on. I'm going to tackle a couple of projects that I know that we need to address from a brokerage level, and I think Claude's going to help me get there. And so I'm real excited about diving in.
Chat GPT, and the reason is because it pumps me up. It talks good about me. Right? It tells me I'm still smart.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, Johnny, we have a server that is a Claude server internally that I can query. We take things of like our call tracker that call in when the agents have, call us in and have questions for us. We track all those. And to be able to go ahead and take that and throw it into Claude and ask the questions, what's the most prevalent question we've had over the last week, the last month? What do we need to do to go ahead and market towards that? Is there something that we might be able to fill a gap that would stop them from having to call in because they have it right there in front of them, and we can go ahead and present it. So we have dived into internal servers using Claude with that one, and we're looking at MCP servers and things of that nature because we have such a huge data set. And it's the one thing that the MLS that we do have is we've got the view, we've got the picture.
Sure.
We just have to be able to go ahead and take that and get the messaging out from that. What can we glean from the information that comes in there? And for me to sit back and say, okay, I have a question about this and get an immediate response instead of having to go to my data team and say, hey, could you give me some of these data points and so on? To have that at my fingertips just makes everybody's life easier, but most importantly, my life easier.
Not to get off topic, but I'd love to speak with you off the pod of the team that's doing that and see if I can gain any insight from them.
And the only limits is the questions that we ask.
Sure. And see, I found that what it does for me is it focuses me into what I'm trying to figure out. So in other words, I am laser focused on how to prompt, how to talk to it. And then I get it back and I'm like, you're close, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. And then it gives me back. So it really has enhanced my ability to think, which I was surprised at, Yeah.
In the role of president of Atlanta Communities, XYZ come back out, and then if this formats it in that manner, and it makes us all smarter. It makes us all look better. For me to sit down and have to write a press release, and I grind over it, and now, what I can put what I feel is out there, and then massage it to your point, Natasha, in the way that I write and come across. And I think agents will be able to go ahead and harness that data to be able to do exactly the same thing to their clients, to present it in the matter. And every client's different. Everybody, thinks differently about their property and different personalities, and to be able to tailor a presentation to a personality, give options.
Yeah. One size fits one.
Right.
There we go. Yeah.
So it's moving. It's moving. It's exciting. It'll be, 5 years from now. I can't imagine. Can't imagine.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of smart companies and people out there that are just accelerating the use of AI. But it all relies on the data and the computing power. We do have the data, and we can get the computing power. So
Excellent.
those are things that we consider. Historically, we don't throw data away at all. We go back years and years. We present a 10-year view to our membership, but in terms of what we have harnessed and siloed in the back of our building, we can go ahead and really take a look at long-term trends, short-term trends, where are we going. So that's the beauty of it, but doing it quickly, not having big projects that linger for 2 weeks and say, where are we? What's the answer? No, we can get those answers quick, and then we can be quicker in what we do.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right, I'm going to push us on to the next question.
Please do.
Yes. Now, we talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to go a little bit further back into the days on market, seller concessions, and price reductions. That has been something we're seing more of. And it's interesting. Some of our agents don't realize that in a normalized market, these things are normal.
They happen.
Yeah. And some people are still into the old way of thinking. It's considered old now. And some are understanding that markets ebb and flow. I'm not using that word.
That. Yes,
ebb and flow. So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the beginning, average days on market for active properties are hovering 60 or more days. And I know John's got some statistics with him as well that he's going to share on the 12 county areas, what he's seeing from the MLS perspective. But here at Atlantic Communities, I know we're at about 54, 55 days is what we're seeing for our properties here year to date. And we're actually in this, we've been in a flat market for really the last, going on the third year. But I know that from our Chief Information Officer, Barry Arnold, we are up 4.9% year to date through March in 2026 versus 2025.
Yeah, we've seen as that market has ebbed and flowed. And that's going to stick with me now as we go through. But 67% of the listings that have sold basically from January to present have had sellers' price concessions. So the buyers understand that that's a piece that they can go ahead and sellers are willing to go ahead and do it. The median is about $5,000 per transaction.
Interesting.
Yeah. So almost 2/3, a little over 2/3 of the listings are showing price concessions as well. And then on we call them price changes, status changes that we see. About a third, 32.9%. Of the listings have shown not just price changes, excuse me. And I can almost guarantee that 99% of those are price reductions. You don't see many, there are some pockets of local areas that are still very desirable and very hot, and then they're getting close to that 100% list price, sell price. But in terms of just the broad overview that we have seen, a third has shown price changes with that one. So ultimately, pricing the property is key. It are you willing, if you overprice it, are you willing to wait those extra 30 days to sell that? And then even then, will you have to come down with that? So putting it in a position to go ahead and sell it quickly at the highest price is very important. And I think that's on the list side of agents that they have to be very aware of that as well.
So I have a question because I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. So this is a surprise question. Can you explain what the median is? Because I think people hear that term, like I remember from stats, mode, median, mean, and how you arrive at average, right? How do you arrive at what that number is?
To me, it's the sweet spot mark. That's how I look at it, right? That's good. So median is half above and half below.
Okay.
So that median price is the sweet spot of what the market is. So we talk about median pricing, housing prices. Tony, you mentioned about 420, from 360, depending on where the market is.
Correct.
We're about 414 is the sweet spot of median pricing. We started out at the beginning of the year at 400,000, and it's crept up, and seasonality plays a little bit in that as well. Little tailwind to boost it up and so on. But median is half above and half below, but it really, to me, is the center.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that's important because, again, for people that are dealing with data, they understand the terms and all this, and I'm not bright enough to know that. So I want to make sure that everybody else understands what we're talking about.
Average price, but averages can be affected by big sales, lower sales, and so on. So median seems to be, it is the actual kind of metric.
I like that.
That, where the market is lying. And different parts of Georgia have different median pricing, but here in the Atlanta core, as we see it, it's about 414 is what we saw in April.
Okay, interesting.
Thank you.
And that's good information for agents that might be tuning into us, to hear about that, what that median means. And then also the information on 67% of seller concessions and, the price changes. That's good information for agents to know when they're working with their buyers or sellers.
Sure.
Whether they're going in with that prospect, sitting down with them for the first time, or it's a seller that they're trying to have to say, hey, we may need to drop this, list price a little bit.
When you see how much equity that, when they publish the numbers of how much equity people are sitting on, and then you have to fight with the seller on any one individual property, even though they've had rapid acceleration between 2020 and where we are now. And nobody wants to lose money, and they'll say, oh, I'll be losing money if I'm doing that. Well,
you just gained tons of equity.
Right. $200,000 in equity is not losing.
No.
Losing is not selling the property to go wherever you want to go after you sell the property. And they, it's tough in terms of explaining it.
And setting the expectation with your client. Going in saying, okay, this is what we know, and this is that bridge of the data to the client. We can assume that we were probably going to have to, seller's concessions are probably going to be in play. Sure. We may have to make sure if we see an ebb and flow in the market, we may have to adjust that property a little bit. So setting the expectation to where that, to your point, where the sellers have in their mind, my property should be because a year ago it was this, or 3 years ago it was this. And to your point about the equity that's built, Mark, that is a piece I think that has really not been talked about a lot. And it goes back to affordability, where first-time home buyers have not been in a property to gain that equity. And when you see that, older demographic groups are the ones that are buying more properties than you see in the first-time home buyers, that is an imbalance right there. That historically, it's always been about 40%. The new home sales have been through, the first-time home buyers. Well, now everything we've seen it's because of the older demographic. They have that additional money. They can go ahead and get up. But the individuals that are trying to get in, they can afford rent, but it's coming up with the down payment money. And that goes back to another agent knowing what the mortgage vehicles that are out there to get somebody in a property, which, agents can bring to the table. But yeah, that equity piece, Mark, is something I think is not talked about a whole lot because people on paper made quite a bit of money sitting on their property.
Yes, they did.
Doing in some cases nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, yeah, nothing. Not even basic maintenance. Or they'll say, "Well, we put in a new HVAC system, put it on a new roof." Okay, that's not an improvement to the property. That is just maintenance. Just maintenance. Yeah, happy for you. I'm glad you spent that money, but it's didn't change anything.
No, and as individuals, we have access to the listings, and you go ahead and pull up a listing. The first thing you go to the photos, and then you look at the photos, and you think, "Wow, not much has happened in this property." But boy, the list price of this property from what historically that it has been, but no real improvements on it, no real, it's just the market drove that up.
Right.
And I think that healthy balance is pulling it. We won't see housing prices go down. I don't feel that, but I think the stabilization of the housing prices and not having the big accelerations that we saw, I don't think we will see that. And the inventory, building up of the inventory, I think it is the main reason behind that.
I think you're right.
Well said.
We have, you asked about a definition, and I think that was great. I think we should define a seller's market, a buyer's market, and a normalized market so that agents can understand what that means as well. Because we hear those terms all the time, but what does that mean for somebody who's just hearing it? or maybe heard it many times and just, have made their own assumptions.
Yeah, and doesn't say, hey, by the way.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. Economists kind of look in the real estate industry anywhere from 4 to 6 months of inventory on the market is a healthy, balanced market. As Tony had mentioned earlier, we were down below 1 month of inventory in there, and 0.9, 0.8%. And like as I'd mentioned, we had 17,000 listings, and that was across the state. That was not just the Atlanta area, and so everybody was in the same position with that low inventory, and that's where it caused that frenzy. We got to act. We got to react. Mm-hmm. And I have to wonder if people jumped into properties that maybe wasn't their A property. They felt that they had to get into a property, so we're willing to go ahead and make a personal concession on this. Yes. And there's been talk a little bit of the pain of where they were a couple of years ago, and now they're maybe questioning the how, so
we've heard stories.
So which is a shame, but that's the movement of what that market brought. We didn't expect it at all. We just didn't expect it. But then again, even during the pandemic, we didn't expect those to be record years either. Right. We thought real estate was going to fall off the map with that one. But to the agents, that they just accepted the way things were. Our governor was great, saying that that
Georgia's open for business.
Yes, that we were, and we honestly we were not out of work for a month. We were only at home for back when it happened in March. When the governor said we're open for business, our CEO said we're open for business too. Back to work.
We stayed open.
We never closed.
Yeah.
We did not.
So we didn't expect the agents to really kind of accept what the market was at the time, and then do virtual tours and doing, using the technology to go ahead and show properties when everybody had a mask on and didn't want to leave their house out of fear.
Right.
So, the adaptability, I think, of our industry and the agents and even buyers and sellers, I think, is commendable. And I think I'm optimistic. I just feel that wherever the market is going to throw at agents and throwing, I think the industry is going to adapt to it. Another good example is commission being removed from the MLS, right? So there was an uproar, and even us, we were like, holy cow, that three-legged stool, and you're pulling one of the legs out from us. But look how agents have been able to adapt, and brokers have been able to adapt and still have those conversations, and the market has still moved forward with that one. So
it's kind of became a non-issue.
Absolutely. And I even think some of the things going on in the industry today is a bit of a non-issue, but we'll work it out. We will work it out, and we will go. And I can tell you, the MLS will be shoulder to shoulder with you to figure out what the needs of Atlanta communities, the rest of our brokers and agents out there. We will figure this out, and we will keep moving forward.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate that partnership and have for a long time.
Yes, we have. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I can tell you, I have just nothing but mad respect for Atlanta communities. And, I've got personal relationships with the respect that I have for what you've achieved, especially as an independent brokerage. I'm looking over my shoulder at the leader. I'm bringing you into this. But no, just respect out there, because there are so many things going on at high levels and M&A and, how the market, organized real estate is being driven in different manners. But Atlanta Communities has always been just solid at the top. And I just have.
Well, thank you. And it really comes down to focus and how we view things. I mean, we know that the most important part of the whole equation is the people. And that's what makes the difference. It's not complicated.
Right.
It's just the rest of it is, like you said, a little noisy for us. Yeah.
Well, that's why we say, why get up every day and come to work? Because if it was boring, and if it was the same thing day in and day out, which this industry is not as y'all, it just feels like this is where I need to be. And I always think, future and down the road. But you know what? As long as I enjoy getting up and coming to work and having the relationships it's the best part of what I do. Are the relationships that I've been able to build and the people that I get to work with and so on, and seeing successes of having companies come in, and then you look at them 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and all of a sudden you see companies succeed. And we'd like to think that maybe that we've had a little bit of a help in giving the tools and the things to get companies moving. So, like I said, Atlanta Communities in a great spot. And just, like I said, mad respect for.
Thank you very much, Sean. That's very appreciated. It's very kind.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention the 4 to 6 months is considered a normal market. So on the other side of that, if it's below 4 months, that would indicate the seller's market.
Seller's market.
Correct. And
Yes.
anything above 6 months of inventory is going to be considered a buyer's market.
Yeah.
So we're kind of edging maybe to a buyer's market.
I think we're kind of there, Natasha. I would have to say I think we're kind of that it is a buyer's market, but I think there's opportunity both on the sell side and the buy side. It's in a good, healthy position. But definitely buyers have with the inventory that's out there, they can be very choosy. They don't have to be urgent. They can be deliberative in that, and they can look at a property and move on to the next one if they so choose. And we've heard of the word due diligence, where they put an offer on a property and then do the due diligence and say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and back out of this, and I'm going to go look at this property. So that's the leverage that a buyer has. But it's like I said, it's a healthy thing.
It is.
Hey, in any transaction, nobody should feel like they're winning over the other for a good transaction. Everybody should be able to come out of the transaction and say, as a seller, I'm happy with what we're receiving on this. And the buyer is saying, I'm happy with what we're paying for this property. Where if it's tilted one way or the other, somebody's going to walk away with a bad taste in their mouth.
I agree.
Agreed.
Yeah, well said, Tony. Agreed. Everybody should feel good about making that size of a purchase and doing things to build for their family and set roots up and so on and have the next chapter. They should feel good about that.
Definitely. All right.
I
Where are
think we knocked out all of our questions.
Did we really? Man,
We did.
what a great conversation we've had
We
here
can do
today.
another. We can keep going. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
This has been great.
It has. Now, you know what? We are going to, do you have something to?
Well, no,
Yes.
but I know in our show notes, right, that's right here, the two questions we're going to ask every guest.
Yes, I know.
Thank you.
I know. And I
Yes.
do have to give credit. We are really ripping this off from Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered. So James Dwiggins and Keith Robertson, they always ask their guests two questions at the end. And that is, number one, what is a book or a podcast besides AC Pro Talk that you should that you're listening to or that you would recommend to the audience?
Good question. An industry colleague that many of us know has written a book, kind of a personal book, and gave me a copy of it. And it's called Dirty Disciple. And it is kind of a reawakening of his faith that had kind of lost his faith, kind of even moved to an atheistic position and had some things kind of in his life change. And it's about his reawakening. And the fact that I've known him personally, business-wise, and sold him cars and things of that nature, but to have him kind of put this book together and kind of put out his internal feelings of where he is at, I found it very interesting. So that's been the most recent book that I have
And I received
diving into.
I received a copy of that book last week as well, and I don't mind mentioning his name, Matt Fagioli. Matt, when you're watching this, much respect to you, my friend, as well. And I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah.
And the second question?
I don't know what it was.
The second question is, I do. If you were to have lunch, dinner, maybe a beverage with somebody current or historical, who would come to mind?
Besides Tony.
Besides Tony.
All right.
Put that right out there.
I know what's funny. Our conversations, I go from business to sports, so we can carry on. I would a two-parter on this one for me. I'm intrigued by Elon Musk. He's a very fascinating guy to me.
Okay.
And the reason being, not the fact that he's a bit quirky, but you've heard of the term BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yes.
And, to him, to do the things that he has done at such a high scale, SpaceX, he started out at PayPal, of course, it fascinates me that people have huge goals and then execute towards those goals. What it takes. I mean, of course, you got to have good teams of people around you. To sit across from him, I think, and have a meal or something just to listen to his, like I said, he's a bit quirky. He's different, But on the personal side, I would have to say my grandfather, who passed away before I was even born.
Okay.
And he was an immigrant that from Ireland, immigrated through Ellis Island. I've been able to research. I know the boat he was on. I got the manifest they was on. Worked his way across from New York out to the West Coast. Worked on the John Day Dam, the Bonneville Dam. Wow. I would just like to have that conversation with my grandfather. Just sitting, at a young age, what made you pick up and just go to the unknown.
Yeah.
And then set up, and he owned a bookstore out in Portland where he set up. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so just on a personal note, I would love to sit and have that guy. I know through family and friends, but I'd love to sit down there and just say, what inside you made you make that move?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big move.
Yes,
That's
New
jumping
world,
past,
yeah.
right.
late 20s, those
When
kind
it's
of
the
things.
East is your past and the West is your future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So if I had to really pinpoint, it'd be my grandfather for sure.
Wow.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank my colleagues, Mark and Natasha. Thank you so much. But a very big thank you, John, to you joining us today in our partnership with Georgia MLS. We really appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, look for us on the next AC Pro Talk podcast coming to you very soon. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Atlanta Communities Real Estate Brokerage. Content shared is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, tax, or real estate advice. Listeners should consult with their own licensed professionals before making business or real estate decisions. Atlanta Communities Real Estate Brokerage is an equal opportunity employer and supports the Fair Housing Act.